Now, in many remote viewing experiments and people's personal experiences, sounds, smells, tastes, temperatures, emotions, conceptuals, etc. are all sensed and experienced by viewers, right? You know, if you can get wavy across, and that means water, then you can get everything there is to know about that target site, you know what I mean? If you can get that information, you should be able to get anything else, right? So why is it that there's this idea that a viewer can't see the visual of the target? Alright, looking and seeing things is probably the most natural thing that we do as beings, right? That's our main, the main sense that orients us in this reality, right? What we see. We use our eyes for our main source of information for most things, right? So, in most remote viewing protocols, the visual aspect is replaced with a kinesthetic drawing, or feeling the target out through the body and the hands, right? And just like we were speaking of earlier with the sending text messages or low resolution images, you know, a lot can be lost in that translation, okay? So it works well. You know, I've done many sessions on video on my YouTube, and there's many great examples of people sketching targets and doing great drawings of target sites. So it's not that it doesn't work, but it's just that a lot can be lost in translation, right? Nothing beats seeing it as it is, right? Or attacking it from both perspectives, you know what I mean? Getting a kinesthetic impression and getting a visual impression. We have a visual cortex for creating images, both the external, what we think of as external images, the ones that we think come from outside, and the subjective images like dreams, visualizations, and memories and things like this. So it can be seen that the whole idea of our visual perception is not limited to the external images, right? We can close our eyes and visualize things, and we have dreams and other visionary experiences. So obviously it's not just, our eyeballs aren't just about collecting light from the outside, right? There's something else going on. So, you know, the main problem is, you know, how do we avoid imagination? Now, the people who are researching remote viewing for the CIA and the military, they're more concerned with creating a methodology that was like foolproof, you know what I mean? So they didn't want imagination coming in the way. They weren't exactly interested in promoting the full extent of human consciousness, okay? They were trying to create a intelligence collection tool, right? That's what they're interested in. They're interested in getting the cleanest data possible and keeping everyone out of the know as possible, you know, keeping people as dumbed down as possible at the same time, okay? So let's not get too carried away. They skipped out on that, you know what I mean? There's more of a learning curve involved with this, getting the visual images, you know what I mean? You are introducing a certain amount of imagination. So how do we avoid the imagination, right? Well, this is how it works. It has to do with the same idea of these brain frequencies. The faculty of imagination, what we think of as imagination, it has a certain capacity as well, right? So it has a certain rate that it operates at. In the beta frequency, imagination takes around 1.5 to 2 seconds to like kick in and actually do something, right? So like if I tell you to imagine a gorilla wearing a top hat, riding a tricycle, peeling a purple banana, it's going to take you a couple seconds to like visually create that image in your mind, right? So the imagination is not instantaneous. It has limitations to it. So the faculty of the subconscious that impresses the remote viewing signal, however, it operates faster than your imagination can. So you can get target information from your subconscious faster than your imagination can make up a story. Do you get what I'm saying? So that means like if you're operating within certain margins, certain time constraints, you can have greater certainty or confidence regarding certain information. Okay, this is why, you know, you're told like when you probe for something, you know, write it. First thing that comes to your mind, you write it down. You don't sit there and think of it, because the longer you wait, the more you're giving your imagination a chance to come in and ruin the information. Okay, so like I have a video on that, on the threshold of awareness, and probably going to go over that a little bit here as well. So within beta, it takes around 1.5 to 2 seconds before the imagination jumps in and ruins everything for you, right? So we know about remote viewing. We know about ideograms, right? Anyone who's studied remote viewing or even on the surface gleaned over it understands that ideograms are the beginning of the protocols. It's how you kick things off. It's how you shake hands with the target, so to speak, right? We know that you don't take your time and draw the ideogram consciously, okay? You don't decide how you're going to draw the ideogram. You can pre-program your subconscious with these reflexive ideogram symbols, or you can let them naturally manifest as like a random squiggle, okay? This is done by, the theory behind this is that the signal kind of like enters your body, bypasses the brain, and manifests through your hand, right? Well, and then through the squiggles, by probing them, or, recognizing the symbol, that's how you figure out the gestalts, right? We're all familiar with this, mostly, right? So ideograms are used to find gestalts. In the beginning of the session, in beta consciousness, I look for the gestalts for the target in a visual ideogram, okay? So it's the same idea here. It's an ideogram. It's being created by the subconscious. But instead of allowing the signal to manifest through, like, the hands, I'm allowing it to manifest in the visual cortex, in your visual field, okay? So I look for it in my visual field, So with my eyes closed in the visual field, on the screen in my mind, okay, this is an imaginary spot in your mind, the screen that, the images appear, okay? We all have it. We all do it. We all have images in our mind. So this is where I'm looking for the visual gestalts, the visual ideograms, okay? Why eyes closed? I've experienced open eye visuals in CRV, okay? I would see shapes and forms and things at the target with my eyes open. And, anyone can bring a memory image up into their mind with their eyes open, and you can see both images at the same time, okay? The reason that we close the eyes, and this is not, practitioners of CRV discourage closing your eyes because it enhances alpha waves. When you close your eyes, alpha waves become more prevalent in your brainwave frequencies, okay? And this can lead to more imagination, right? Creative thinking. So that was left out of, kind of like discourage in CRV. I close my eyes because I want to boost alpha, right? Because that's where that's the bandwidth that has the capacity to experience intuitive thinking, right? We were breaking down the different capacities, right? So if you want to experience intuitive thinking, you want to get into alpha. So I close my eyes, which boosts alpha, and I'm looking in my visual cortex on the screen, and I'm looking for the visual gestalt. To avoid imagination, I'm only looking for less than 2 seconds, okay? So it's just like the ideogram. When the ideogram gets produced, if you took a minute to draw your ideogram, well, your ideogram's probably no good, right? It wasn't this reflexive subconscious manifestation. It was your conscious mind getting in the way and creating what it wanted to create. Your visual field will do the same thing. You close your eyes, and for sure your imagination's going to come in and give you something to look at, right? So you only look for a short period of time, and you draw what you see. That's how capturing these visual ideograms works. Bringing it up to the visual cortex is a little more challenging. It takes a little more practice. It's a little more elusive. It's not as evident as I'm going to show you soon, right? I'm going to show you some my artistic representations of what these images look like in the mind's eye. Okay? So as the session moves on, the brainwave frequency moves deeper into alpha state. That's what remote viewing protocols are for. They're focusing you in on something so that your activity thinking brainwave is reduced and that you're getting closer to this alpha wave, you know what I mean? But they, most of them don't want you to close your eyes, because then you'll go. They don't want you to go too far into alpha. Okay, they want you right on that threshold, which is a great place to be. Okay, so as the session moves on, alpha state becomes more prevalent, and the imagination kind of like is suppressed a bit once you get into the deeper alpha mode. It's not going to be throwing as many images out at you because you're in this more relaxed state, right? And in that state, the target imagery can stay longer within your consciousness. The target imagery has a longer time to stay within your visual field, because now you're moving at this alpha rate. You're operating at a different capacity. You have a different bandwidth, right? You can hold and appreciate more in the alpha state. Beta doesn't have the capacity to hold those images for very long. Okay, so now the target imagery stays for like 3 or 4 seconds sometimes. Okay. Later on in the session, this is when the brainwave state is bordering on alpha and theta, right? Almost dropping down to the lower level of relaxation. I take the gestalts that were identified earlier, and I'm trying to isolate them now and look at them in the same visual field, on the same screen in my mind. I'm trying to look at these images. And so when the eyes are closed, it causes a spike in alpha, right? And sometimes bordering on theta, which is kind of like a daydream state, okay? So these images can manifest in vivid color and sometimes even moving images. Okay, so I'm going to try and make a little illustration here to help you visualize how these brainwave states could interact with the target signal and the threshold of awareness. Okay? So now let me remind you that there's no one brainwave frequency present in the brain at one time. There's all these different frequencies happening at once. It's a dynamic system. Okay? So if you take a measurement of someone's brain waves right now, the next moment it's already changed. Okay, it's a dynamic system. Everything you do is changing your brainwave frequencies. You eat something, your emotions. It's an alive thing. Okay, it's not a dead, static thing. It's dynamic. You can imagine this here as the threshold of awareness. Okay, so this is where the idea that we have of like subconscious and conscious mind. Okay, so things below here we're not aware of in our waking state. Okay, so this is like our beta threshold of awareness. Okay, so we're gonna draw the remote viewing signal is gonna be in green. Okay, so you can imagine the remote viewing signal as this emerging from somewhere in the subconscious, okay, and it comes up when we start doing remote viewing. It's coming up, and it's coming up towards the threshold of awareness, like this. Okay, so if you're sitting on the threshold of awareness, which is what remote viewing methodologies tend to do, bring you down to this threshold. Let's say your beta, this is going to be the beta brainwave. We're going to draw this in red. Okay. So beta is this noisy kind of awake state of consciousness, okay? And there's moments where it'll dip down and it'll catch signal, okay? So early contact, okay, the ideogram comes through and you get this burst of energy, you get some colors, some smells, some sounds, stuff like that. This is where the signal line and your brainwave frequency are like syncing up, okay, so you're perceiving something at these points here. Okay, this is beta. We'll say that this up here is beta, up here. This is in the alpha range, we'll say, because alpha can come down and you can have some intuitive experiences, right? So we'll say this area in the middle is like alpha range. So In remote viewing, you know, you're getting focused, you're dipping down, you're getting some information, you're probing, you're getting some information like this. Beta only allows for a certain capacity, right? We've been over this. Certain qualities and types of information. It's not capable of everything. If you want to get what we call like deeper target contact, or, you know, you're going to have to get into the alpha range, right? So we're going to draw the alpha. I'm going to draw this in this blue. Hopefully this shows up here. So you can imagine the alpha. Let's say you are in alpha, or beta and alpha. So the session might start off in beta, and as you get deeper into alpha, okay, you're coming down to this area, and now you're going to have moments where the alpha has way more contact with the signal line than your beta brainwaves do. Okay, so these moments of overlap, you're gonna have stronger target contact. Okay, so these are the impressions. So beta can access the signal line. You know, you can access it, you can get information, but it's only of a certain resolution and bandwidth. Okay, you want clear visuals, you want harder hitting impacts of things that, you know, you can have more of a direct experience with. Well, you're going to need to get down into this alpha range, and, you know, there's ERV and stuff like that, extended remote viewing, and that takes you all the way down into theta. Okay, so theta is the other brainwave frequency that's more in tune with like deep dreaming and deep sleep. All right, so you'll be like down here. Okay, you'll have way more vivid experiences in theta, but, you know, you're not conscious with theta, so you're gonna be in the, you know, unconscious, not unconscious. We all experience our dreams, but, you know, in the mainstream terms, you know, you're not in your waking conscious state, so it's harder to control. So this perfect balance of beta and alpha is ideal for a controlled state of remote viewing. Okay, so hopefully this can help you visualize what I mean by getting on the right frequency to sync up with this target signal, okay, getting a deeper level of target contact. So now I'm going to give you a little insight onto what these images look like, the quality of these images when you get this kind of contact here. Okay, so what do these visuals look like? What are remote viewers seeing when they say when they see the target, right? What do they look like? What do these images look like? With the eyes closed, you know, a lot of people have belief problems with the idea that you close your eyes and you see something on demand. Well, I've been trying to explain how that's possible using, you know, this idea of, you know, closing your eyes as a filter, which suppresses certain frequencies and boosts alpha. So this is like playing your brain waves like an instrument. Okay, remote viewing, it's an art form, and you know, the methodologies help walk you through it, but they're like training wheels. Okay, once you get the hang of it, you know, this is natural. These abilities are innate within us. Okay, so this is up to you to discover and explore on your own. Okay, you can't expect government agencies to teach you how to think and how to be, and teach you about your own consciousness. Okay, this is ours to explore now. So maybe if you'd like, get a pencil and paper, a pen and paper. I'm gonna flash some of these images that I've made. I've taken photographs and I've edited them to create representations of what I see and what other practitioners of clairvoyant perception describe these images to look like. Okay, they often look like film negatives, like black and white, smudged patches and splotches. Okay, in the early contact. Okay, when you're in beta and alpha, light alpha and beta, this is how these images appear. Okay, so get a pencil and paper, and I want you to write down. I'm gonna flash these images for like a second and a half. Okay, because that's how fast these things flicker in and out during a remote viewing session. So I'm going to flash an image here, and I want you to write down what gestalts you think are in it. Okay, is it, is it air, is it water, is it land, is it people, is it structure? Just basic stuff like that. That's how looking for a visual gestalt works in remote viewing. So I'm going to do a couple of these, but we'll start with the first one here. Okay, so if you're ready, I'm going to flash this for 1.5 seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3, gone. Okay, so write down what gestalts you think were in that target, okay, at that target. Okay, so these are very splotched, smudged, dark images. When you close your eyes, it's more akin to the after images that you see when you close your eyes after looking at something. Okay, faint outlines, gross shapes, but as target contact gets better, these become more defined. Depending on, this is not, none of this is guaranteed, okay? This is it's not going to work 100% of the time, okay? This is, like I said, this is a dynamic system. It's alive. Consciousness is dynamic, okay? So let's move on to the second image here, okay? I want you to write down which gestalts you think are at this target. I'm going to flash this, okay? 1, 2, 3, gone. So write down what gestalts you think were contained at that target. I'm going to do one more here. Okay. 1, 2, 3, gone. Okay, write that down. So now I'm gonna, go back through these. I'm gonna give you another better look at these, and then I'm gonna show you kind of like what they, on a good day, what they can look like when you get into like a deeper alpha state. Okay, like when the quality of the image can be more recognizable. So let's go back here to the first one. Okay, so I'm gonna put this up on here now so you can get a better look at it. But in session, that's how fast it comes and goes. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you a taste for what you're going to be looking for when you try and do these kinds of things. So here's this first image. Okay, so as you can see, it's hazy, it's smudged. There's a couple shapes that maybe you could define out of it. It's easy to jump to conclusions when you see things like this. Like, I'm sure some people already are thinking like UFO or something like that. Okay, so these are the kinds of images that you're looking for in the visual field. Okay, very subtle. You'll think it's nothing if you're not really looking. And this is like, I'm trying to recreate these. Sometimes they're partial images. They're not as neat and centered or defined as this. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what this could look like when you get to a deeper state of contact. Okay, this is like what I experience when I'm in the later part of my sessions and I'm trying to isolate the gestalts. So trying to find the gestalts and identify them early in the session, it looks like this image here on the screen. Later on in the session, when I'm in that deeper alpha state and getting lost in the session, it's like reading a book. Eventually you lose track that you're flipping the pages and you get engulfed in the story, right? So this is what happens later on in the session. So this image then can appear like this later excuse me, later on in the session. And that can sustain for a few seconds. Sometimes it's more blurred or more hazy, or it might be in motion. Okay, so I don't know if you could suss what that was from that visual, but then that's just the visual aspect. Of course, after that, there's probing, recalling, interrogating the image for more information, just like you do in any other remote viewing protocol. So here's the actual target photo. Okay, it's a merry-go-round. So I'm going to flash the original one. here's what it looked like in the early stages. So you can see there and there. So you're looking for a very subtle, almost like a film negative, splotches of color is what you're looking for in the beginning, and you just got to work with this. You're not going to put analysis on them. You just record them, and you move forward with the protocol, just like all the other protocols. Okay, you're not going to get this visual and try and say what the target is. Okay, you're just going to be wrong. You're not on the right brainwave frequency. You don't have the capacity, or you're not at the right frequency to really appreciate the target yet at this level. Okay, that's why it's not clear. Okay, so the second image that we took a look at here, I'm going to bring it back up here. Okay, so this is what it looked like. It's like a film negative. Maybe you can make out some lines, some patterns, things like this at this stage in the game. Okay, and now here's what it can look like at a deeper level of contact. Something like this. Okay, these type of images will fade in and out. Sometimes they'll flicker in and out quickly, and then they're gone. Okay, so it's easy. It's not as clear cut as people think it is. Okay, sometimes you'll see a partial image of something. You can easily see an image like this and still misconstrue what it is. You might think that's a bridge with a train going down it, or something like that. But when you get the target photo, you may realize that it's a dock, something down at the beach. There's this structure up on this elevated area there. This last image that we looked at, here it is again. Some things are easier to identify than others. So, you know, seeing right angles and determining if there's a structure gestalt sometimes is easier than other things. Sometimes seeing people is easier because the shape of a person, of the human body, certain parts of it are easily recognizable, right? So in this image here, if you look closely, you can see, you could probably make out the outlines of people. Okay, so that's not uncommon to happen in the early stages when you're trying to probe for these visuals. In later contact, may end up looking something like this. Okay. As you can see, it's still not, you know, completely clear, and this all depends on the session. Sometimes things come in amazing clarity. Sometimes they're still hazy. Sometimes further on in the session, the visuals are still black and white and hazy and smudged, and haven't increased in quality. Things like that happen as well. So this is all up in the air still. Okay, folks. There's no clear-cut answer to a lot of these questions. Okay. Here's what the target image actually looks like. Okay, so I hope that gave you a little, like, so now you know what to look for, right? If I give you a target and said, close your eyes and look for the target, 80% of the people are going to say they don't see anything. But chances are you are seeing something. It's just that your conscious mind doesn't accept it as something, right? You see some smudges and colors or some little patches. Your expectation is that you're going to see this. You're going to see the target, but it doesn't work like that. You got to work yourself in. The aperture has to open up, and you'll have those experiences where you have target contact and these visuals come through. Okay, so seeing visuals in remote viewing is basically, it's got some of the same downfalls as seeing things visually, like in real life. Like, you can see something and misunderstand it, right? So the same thing can happen even in remote viewing. Okay, you can see a visual and not consciously recognize what it is. That can still happen. So, methodologies are like training wheels, like I said. Okay, when the signal comes, you need to be there to see it. Okay, so if you're practicing remote viewing and you're not making an attempt to see anything, well then that part of the signal is not going to be perceived. It's just as simple as that. We have a visual cortex that's meant for creating images. So if you're receiving information or communication, let's say remote viewing, running it into your visual cortex is, how you'll glean the visual information in a more direct fashion, right? So methodologies are like training wheels, okay? They set a pattern of behavior, and that pattern of behavior was designed to heighten your chances of target contact. That's simply because, the amount of mental effort and focus that's required to go through the methodology brings you down into a more intuitive brainwave state, okay? So it's built into the methodology. Artists and other creatives, they experience the alpha and theta frequencies probably more easily, or people who meditate often, because they've trained themselves to go down to the alpha state, that it comes naturally to them. Okay, so I hope this, was helpful. I hope it gave some information, the whole technique of creating a screen in your mind, okay? It sounds stupid, it sounds silly, but it does require practice and diligence, and it requires this feedback loop, okay? You gotta try it, see what happened, correct yourself, and you gotta repeat that over and over again, okay? Like printers, like old school printers, and probably even some of them still today, usually when you get them, you gotta print out like a calibration sheet. You print out the calibration sheet and you put it back into the printer, like into the scanner area of the printer. So the printer scans something that it produced in order to calibrate itself, right? So that's like a feedback loop. So in remote viewing, if you want to increase your accuracy, you need to create a feedback loop. So you need to produce something, and then you need to compare what you produced, feed it back into your inputs, right? So you produce something against the target, you see how well you did or how well you didn't do, and then you take that information and you reincorporate it so that the next time you do it, you're aware of that pattern of behavior that you did last time, okay? So it's all about practice. It's all about changing your belief systems, okay? Like I said in the beginning, if you believe in reductionist materialism philosophies, this is going to be hard for you to grasp, okay? It might not work for you. So, read more, open your mind to other philosophies and other ways of thinking. Even the scientific reductionist materialist people are even like bumping up against this topic, okay? So they can't avoid it for much longer without creating the next Inquisition or something. So I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful in any way, any donations or contributions are appreciated. There's no obligation, of course. Subscribe, like, and comment and share, and let me know what other kinds of things you'd like to see me talk about. So peace and love, y'all.